Welcome to Rush University Medical Center. This presentation has been prepared to help familiarize you with some of the medical center's policies and applicable local, state, and federal regulations. This is not a complete guide to all of Rush's safety rules, but a summary of all work practices necessary to maintain a safe work environment. Failure to follow this or any applicable rules and regulations may result in temporary suspension or immediate dismissal from the medical center. All construction, maintenance, and service contractors and their subs must go through a screening process prior to performing work in the medical center. All contractors must be evaluated and approved by Rush's pre-qualification committee prior to performing work. If you are not on Rush's approved contractor list, you are not permitted to conduct work. Medical facilities are among some of the most highly regulated industries in the United States. They must operate under strict guidelines, rules, and regulations. These are just a few of the regulatory agencies with which the medical center must comply. This includes, but is not limited to, City of Chicago, CMS, the Joint Commission, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Department of Transportation, OSHA, IDPH, and the EPA. Contractors are required to wear an identification badge issued by the Rush Security Department at all times while on site. If you do not have a badge, talk to your supervisor or a Rush project manager to start the process. If you need a new or replacement ID badge, visit Security Services in room LL1502 in the lower level of the tower at the following times: Mondays, 2 to 4 p.m., Tuesdays, 1 to 3 p.m., Wednesdays, 7:30 to 10:30 a.m., Thursdays, 1 to 3 p.m., and Fridays, 7:30 to 10:30 a.m. If an ID badge is misplaced or forgotten, temporary identification must be worn. In order to ensure facility security, your regular Rush badge will be deactivated as you are issued a temporary ID badge. Your regular Rush badge will be reactivated when you return the temporary badge to the Brennan Pavilion. An employee needing a temporary ID Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. must come to the Security Services offices in the lower level of the tower, room LL1502. Between 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., the employee can obtain a temporary ID from security in the tower lobby. On Saturday, Sunday, and holidays, IDs can be replaced in the tower lobby at any time. In consistency with the Rush University Medical Center's mission to promote the health, safety, and quality of life of all the people who come to the Rush campus, Rush prohibits smoking or the use of tobacco on the medical center campuses. This includes cigarettes, cigars, pipes, all forms of smokeless tobacco, e-cigarettes, and other products made primarily with tobacco. RUMC Main Campus and the West Campus are defined as those areas indicated on the attached campus map. It includes all RUMC-owned or leased buildings, grounds, walkways, parking lots, public and private vehicles, and any public sidewalks or streets that fall within RUMC campus boundaries. It also includes property adjacent to RUMC-owned or leased properties on either campus or all sidewalks surrounding campus. It includes Paulina Street Bridge, which passes over the Eisenhower Expressway, I-290, and both the east and west sidewalks on the bridge. Wireless communication devices, such as cell phones, may only be used in the lobbies and waiting areas unless otherwise designated. These devices must be turned off when in patient care areas or in patient care vicinity. Please obey the posted signs indicating where wireless devices are prohibited. Given the around-the-clock functioning of the medical center, there will always be staff and patients on site. Therefore, every effort must be made during the pre-construction process to discuss all aspects of the project that could create noise or vibrations that might disrupt patient care. Vibrations from various construction activities could significantly impact delicate medical equipment and jeopardize a patient's treatment. No radios are allowed on construction sites. Obviously, there are some levels of noise from machinery or certain procedures which cannot be avoided. Always alert staff members before beginning any of these noise-producing activities so that nearby patients and staff know what to expect. Every attempt must be made to protect the comfort and safety of all patients by keeping the noise and vibrations to a minimum. Infection prevention and safety in healthcare construction. All construction projects at Rush involve the following departments: infection prevention, occupational safety, medical center engineering, capital projects, security, and other departments as necessary. Infection prevention and safety are everybody's concern. What are some potential hazards in a hospital? Construction mold and dust are health risks for anyone in the area. Do not handle or touch any needles or body fluids. Contact Housekeeping Services Department at extension 25290 for any blood or body fluid spills. If you have an infectious disease or may be exposed to an infectious disease, for example, a child at home with chickenpox or measles, contact Employee Health at extension 25878. Rush Emergency Codes. Throughout the day, you may hear some of these codes paged through the campus overhead. It is important you familiarize yourself with these codes. Most importantly, it is important that you know how to respond to a fire emergency. Code Red will be reviewed in further detail later on in the presentation. How is infection control related to construction? Healthcare facilities serve patients with various illnesses and disabilities. Construction sites involve disruption of building components, staff workflow, and the patient environment. During construction, dust, mold, and other potentially hazardous materials may be stirred up and can be harmful and even deadly to patients. All construction projects must complete and have a Project Risk Assessment, PRA. This is a signed document detailing the risk of the project to the patient or occupants and outlines the infection control, ILSM, safety precautions that need to be implemented. The contractor and subcontractors must adhere to the agreed upon details of the PRA. The PRA must be posted on the entry door. Mold. Construction sites contain many molds, including Aspergillus mold. Mold can get patients sick and even kill them. They can cause pneumonia and other infections. This poses a major risk for people who are immunocompromised and cannot fight the infection. Many patients you would not suspect are immunocompromised. How does dust and mold escape? On construction sites, damp conditions may promote growth. It can even enter through windows and wall penetrations, and also be carried on clothing, shoes, materials, and dusty carts. Construction sites can also generate mold by exposing and opening drywall, ceilings, ductwork, during demolition, and even during new construction. How do we keep mold and dust from getting out? The perimeter of the project needs to be sealed. All penetrations and fixed, permanent, and temporary barriers must be thoroughly sealed. Ceiling tiles and barriers must also remain intact. In addition, all doors to the construction site must be closed. Additional methods to keeping dust and mold from getting out include keeping the area under negative pressure if indicated by the PRA, utilizing HEPA machines and making sure they remain plugged in at all times. The filters must be kept clean and hoses intact. Using monitors and keeping them on and functioning. In addition, all ducts must be covered and the covers must be intact. We need to keep the dust in. Do not track dirt and dust into the surrounding areas. The site must be kept neat and clean. Do not store site materials outside of the site and replace tacky mats when dirty. Remove coveralls and shoe covers when leaving the site, and even vacuum hair and clothes as needed. Delivery and haul out is only to be done during authorized times. Do not store anything outside of the construction site and be sure to wipe gondolas, wheels, and tools prior to leaving site. All debris is to be placed in an approved waste container with a tight-fitting lid. In addition, delivery and haul out must follow an approved traffic flow pattern. Performing construction-related activities within a medical environment presents an even greater challenge than many of your more typical construction projects. Many patients receive life support assistance in the form of critical services. These services, such as oxygen, medical gases, and procedural equipment, may be exposed within the construction area. These services cannot be compromised. All employees and contractors who work on or around these services must be cognizant of the special precautions necessary to avoid incident. Prior to shutting down any service, a shutdown request must be completed and approved by Medical Center Engineering. Asbestos is a naturally occurring family of minerals formed by combinations of magnesium and silica. These minerals in the form of hollow microscopic fibers which are nearly indestructible and can be densely packed, making it tough, flexible, and very useful material. Asbestos can be found in many places in the medical center and in many different materials. Some of these may include thermal system insulation found on ducts, boilers, and hot water pipes, or on high-temperature gaskets or valve insulation. In sprayed-on fireproofing found on metal beams and columns, within flooring materials such as tiles and mastic, in laboratory countertops and fume hoods, in troweled-on surfacing materials used in ceiling or walls or in drywall taping and joint compounds, rated fire doors, suspended ceiling tiles, or many other materials that may be used throughout the medical center. While the uses for asbestos may be numerous, its hazards are well documented and widely known. When bonded together within the matrix of other building materials, asbestos fibers pose little hazard, but when released from the bonding matrix and these fibers are broken down into microscopic fibrils, these tiny fibrils are what make asbestos so hazardous. If they are inhaled, they enter the lungs and lodge in the lining of the lungs or the alveoli. These fibers irritate the membrane of these areas and leave scar tissue, which affects the ability of oxygen to penetrate them. Oxygen starvation can set in and can result in severe breathing difficulty or death. There are no immediate outward symptoms of asbestos exposure. In fact, exposure symptoms may not manifest for 20 to 30 years after exposure has taken place. The Medical Center has established a system of identification, maintenance, remediation, and abatement of asbestos-containing materials. It is the policy of the Medical Center to properly identify and eliminate any unnecessary disturbance of asbestos-containing materials through an effective asbestos program. Prior to the start of any work, the work area must be inspected to identify any asbestos-containing building materials that may be impacted during the project. The following procedures must be conducted prior to beginning any construction or renovation work. The Medical Center's asbestos consultant must be contacted to arrange for verification or sampling to determine the asbestos content of the affected materials prior to the start of any work. The Occupational Safety Department must be notified of the presence and locating of asbestos-containing materials prior to demolition activities. Required areas must be abated prior to the start of any work that could disturb these materials. All contractors must ensure that any worker who may essentially disturb ACM while performing their work must have undergone the appropriate awareness training conducted by your company to avoid any unnecessary disturbance. All construction personnel must have received training in hazard communication from their company. They must maintain all applicable SDS documentation on the job site and an inventory of the hazardous products to be used. Labels are required on all containers, drums, and tanks used for the storage of hazardous materials. These labels must provide appropriate warnings of the hazards associated with the material. All spills and leaks of the hazardous materials must be immediately reported to the Occupational Safety Department at 2SAFE, otherwise known as extension 27233. Contractors must assess their work environment on a routine basis to identify any confined spaces that their worker actions may encounter or introduce. Contractors that encounter or introduce potential confined spaces should notify the RUMC representative. Each confined space created or encountered by the contractor will be evaluated by the contractor to determine its status as permit or non-permit required. The RUMC representative may be able to provide information on existing spaces. A confined space is a space that has limited or restricted means for entry or exit. and it is not designed for continuous employee occupancy. Confined spaces include, but are not limited to, underground vaults, tanks, storage bins, manholes, pits, silos, process vessels, and pipelines. OSHA uses the term permit-required confined space to describe a confined space that has one or more of the following characteristics: contains or has the potential to contain a hazardous atmosphere, contains a material that has the potential to engulf an entrant, has walls that converge inward or floors that slope downward and taper into a smaller area which could trap or asphyxiate an entrant, or contains any other recognized safety or health hazard, such as unguarded machinery, exposed live wires, or heat stress. All confined spaces must be considered a permit-required confined space until the pre-entry procedures demonstrate otherwise. The following items must be evaluated: atmospheric and engulfment hazards, the surroundings are present, no hazard of drifting vapors, a continuous atmospheric testing is conducted. No person is permitted to enter any confined space without a properly executed confined space entry permit from Rush's Medical Center Engineering. The permit must be completed prior to the start of any work and posted at the entry point of the confined space. Physical entry must not be made into any unknown flammable or oxygen-enriched atmosphere under any circumstances. Confined spaces must be surveyed to determine whether or not they meet these minimum requirements prior to any entry. Confined space entry should be avoided at any time other than the normal day shift whenever possible. If confined space entry is necessary during an off shift, it must first have the proper authorization of the supervisor before the work is initiated. Before any such authorization is given, the supervisor must ensure there are competent persons to respond in the event of an emergency. In the event of a fire, remember the acronym RACE. Rescue. Rescue anyone that is in the immediate danger of a fire. Alarm. Alarm building occupants of the presence of a fire by activating the fire alarm pull station and by calling the emergency page operator at 25111 from the nearest house phone. Confine. Help confine the spread of smoke or fire by closing all doors, windows, and other sources of airflow. Extinguish. Extinguish the fire if it is small and you know how to do it safely. Otherwise, do your best to contain the fire and evacuate to a safe area if necessary. When attempting to extinguish a fire, remember the acronym PASS. Pull the pin. A small pin is inserted through the handle of the fire extinguisher to prevent accidental discharge. The pin is held in place by a small tamper seal that will break easily when the pin is pulled. Aim at the base of the fire. Squeeze the handle of the extinguisher to release the extinguishing media from the fire extinguisher. Sweep the nozzle or hose from side to side until the fire is completely out. Start using the extinguisher from a safe distance away and then slowly move forward once the fire is out. Keep the following safety precautions in mind when attempting to extinguish any fire. Only use a fire extinguisher if the fire is small and you know how to extinguish it safely. Before attempting to extinguish a fire, first be sure that the fire has been reported. Always ensure that you have the correct type of extinguisher for the particular class of fire. Never fight a fire if you don't know what is burning. You won't know what type of extinguisher to use. Even if you have a multi-purpose extinguisher and you don't know what's burning, there could be something in the fire which could explode or produce highly toxic smoke. Always stay between the fire and an exit. Leave yourself a way out in case the fire gets out of control. If you can't extinguish the fire or it is spreading rapidly beyond the place where it started, then evacuate immediately. Never turn your back on a fire that you think is out. It could reignite. Always trust your instincts. If you're uncomfortable with the situation for any reason, then evacuate and wait for the fire department to respond. Fire and smoke barriers and firewalls are critically important in limiting the passage of smoke and fire from one area to another. This gives the building suppression system or firefighters a better chance to control the fire before the entire structure becomes involved. It is critical that the compartmentalization of the structure be maintained in order to reduce the severity of a fire and ensure safety of both life and property. Whenever a penetration is made in the wall, floor, or ceiling, the structure must be restored to its original fire rating. Fire stop products can play a significant part in saving the number of lives and property lost unnecessarily due to the rapid spread of smoke and fire. Hot work is any work using open flames or sources of heat that could ignite material in the work area. Before beginning any hot work, ask yourself if the work can be done in a safer way. Hot work is hazardous and should be avoided if not absolutely necessary. Some examples of hot work include welding, cutting, burning, brazing, heat-applied flooring and roofing, soldering or similar flame or spark-producing work. Due to the Municipal Code of Chicago, oxygen acetylene and methyl acetylene propyldine, also called MAPP gas, are the only approved hot work gases used in the medical center. Liquefied petroleum gases such as propane are banned from use anywhere on medical center property. Contractors must ensure that all persons performing hot work have been trained on proper equipment operation, handling, and storage of welding material, compressed gas safety, and chemical hazards. All workers must be aware of the evacuation routes and locations of fire alarm pull stations. The following hot work procedures must be followed on all projects involving hot work. First, all notifications must be made prior to the start of work. This includes coordination with the medical center engineering for any required shutdowns and with occupational safety to obtain a hot work permit. All shutdowns must be coordinated with MCE at the week shutdown meeting. Second, contractors must inspect all equipment to be used during the operation to ensure it is in good working condition and make sure that they have a properly certified Class ABC fire extinguisher readily available, fully charged, and inspected. Third, contractors should double check to see that only approved hot work gases are going to be used and that all gases are stored appropriately. Next, check to see that the area is free from all combustible and flammable materials, and if applicable, tank lines or other equipment are purged of flammable liquids and vapors prior to initiating hot work. Proper PPE is to be worn during hot work operations. The type of work to be performed and the hazards present during the work will dictate the required PPE. A safe area is to be maintained throughout the operation. If at any time during the work a hazardous condition is noted, the operations will cease immediately until the hazard is resolved. Rush uses a hot work permit system as a means of preventing fires due to non-routine open flame and high temperature processes. Permits are issued to worker for the specific job being performed and for a specific time frame. A fire watch should use trained personnel who continuously patrol the work area, have quick access to extinguishers, and can quickly contact the fire department. The fire watch person should not only be looking for fire, but making sure that the other fire protection features in the building, such as egress routes and alarm systems, are available and functioning properly. The person conducting the fire watch is responsible for the following duties. Employees assigned to fire watch duty must be trained in the proper use of fire extinguishing equipment, using the race and pass procedures, and be familiar with the area being monitored and locations of extinguishers and fire alarm pull stations. They should also ensure that the alternate person is available during their rest and meal breaks. They should maintain the watch for 30 minutes after the completion of hot work and until the fire alarm and detection systems is back in service. If the fire alarm detection or suppression system is out of service for more than 4 hours, a documented fire watch is required. Compressed gas cylinders require special handling and storage. All cylinders must be secured in place with a strap or chain designated for the application and placed around the upper portion of the cylinder. Never secure cylinders around the valve. Substitutes such as ropes or bungee cords are prohibited. The cylinder valve must be closed when not in use, and the caps must be in place when cylinders are stored or moved. The Rush Construction Maintenance Manual requires shirts with at least 4-inch sleeves, no tank tops are allowed, loose or frayed clothing, loose or hanging long hair, ties, scarves, chain wallets, rings or other body jewelry shall not be worn around moving machinery or in other areas where they may become entangled with machinery or equipment. No explicit language or images on clothing is allowed. Long pants, work boots, safety glasses, and hard hats are required at all times. Additional PPE is required for specific tasks or in certain areas. When substituting safety glasses for prescription glasses, the prescription glasses must have ANSI-rated lenses, frames, and must be equipped with ANSI-rated side shields. High visibility reflective safety vests must be worn by all construction maintenance personnel who work on or near active highways, roads, parking lots, or in new construction. Vests are also required for other work that places personnel such as flaggers, riggers, heavy equipment spotters, and survey crews near motor vehicles. Contractors must work with Medical Center Engineering and the RUMC representative to review all utilities that present a hazard during demolition or construction, including but not limited to electric, gas, plumbing, and steam. When possible, these systems should be disconnected and de-energized prior to the beginning of the work. All critical service systems, including but not limited to water, power, medical gas, fire suppression, fire alarm, and teledata, must be labeled with appropriate warning signs prior to the start of any demolition activities. Each contractor must develop a detailed SPA outlining any live utility systems where work is being performed. If live utility systems are identified, additional precautions must be implemented to mitigate the hazard, example being additional barriers, spotters, and isolating systems. Be familiar with shutoff locations for sprinkler and water lines, and who to notify in an emergency. If an incident occurs, notify MCE, the Rush Project Manager, and the Administrator on call at 312-942-6000 and enter pager number 7123. Working around water lines or systems? If so, you must have an emergency response kit readily available to mitigate operational impacts, in addition to mitigating water damage. MCE has compiled a recommended water response kit that should be readily available on all projects. Please contact MCE for the list. Do not use power tools when exposing or removing wall, structure, or material surrounding critical systems. Power tools may only be used after non-motorized hand tools are used to expose the area or wall and there is confirmation that no live systems are present. Always check both sides of the wall when possible to confirm that there are no other systems in the adjacent area. Contractors are required to provide one 10-pound ABC fire extinguisher per 2,500 square feet in the job site. Subcontractors are required to provide at least one 10-pound ABC fire extinguisher for each activity requiring hot work. This includes any open flame or heat spark producing activity. An Illinois licensed fire equipment company must properly certify all fire extinguishers annually. Certification tags must be in place and initialed showing consecutive monthly inspections. All extinguishers must be in good operating condition and be fully charged with a tamper seal in place. All extinguishers must be wall-mounted or placed on elevated stands. Non-compliance to the agreed-upon precautions and details of the PRA or ILSM can result in a site shutdown by the mandating department. A shutdown means that no work is allowed to occur until the issues are resolved. Shutdowns can result in penalties to the contractors and subcontractors. In addition, Rush may also issue a notice of safety noncompliance, notice of temporary job suspension, or permanently remove contractor from campus and may terminate the project's contract. So in conclusion, adhere to the PRA and safety rules. Your role at Rush is important. These precautions keep you, the staff, and patients safe. A little bit of dust is a major health risk for many patients.